Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. My name is Jed and today we are reading Philosophical Midwifery together. Thank you for following along with the series. We are a few episodes in and we are discovering how philosophical midwifery came to be. What were the origins or causes for this whole thing? This fantastic, new, essential discovery of how to understand and remove problems that is, as we looked at last time, essential for any spiritual tradition. And we don't have to just apply it to spiritual goals. They are, of course, the highest, but any goal, any system, any learning that you're in, essential along with that is this philosophical midwifery, which we are following along with its how it was discovered. I didn't say that very well. This thing that we are learning about how it came to be, but not only that, not only is it essential for all spiritual traditions, as we read last time, it might even be a kind of spiritual tradition that can rival all other ones we happen to find around us right now. So that's exciting. So, let's just jump in. If you're this far through the series, then you know a lot about midwifery, why we're doing it, how it needs to be alongside philosophy, that it's the logos and dialectic applied to problems, that it's the purification side of perfection. So purification and perfection, a pair or a dyad. Fate and destiny, this is removing fate so we can be free to discover our destiny. We know a lot about that now, so let's just jump in. Where we were last time. What? I don't seem to be able to zoom in a little bit. Where we left off last time was to encourage anybody watching along with this channel to use whatever level of understanding of philosophical midwifery you might have, use it to address the struggles you face in your life or in your meditations or in any of your pursuits. Because whatever level midwifery functions on, it is the logos that seeks expression. So we're learning more about what's going on in this bizarre reality we find ourselves in. The logos is seeking expression. In 1982, the Zen or Sun master, Chon An, who was later given the name Myo Bong. The way I always remembered that was if you are going to study Zen with a Zen master, you might want to bring my own bong to do bong rips. Oh, come on, it wasn't that bad a joke. So, Myo Bong, my own bong. Often that's associated with meditation. So it wasn't a bad joke. Of the Chogi Buddhist order in Korea, suggested we create a center that would combine Buddhism and Platonic philosophy. He was present when I was demonstrating philosophical midwifery before members of the Noetic Society, and later he and I would discuss some of these midwife talks. It was during these talks that I realized only too well what a task I had been engaging in, since I was revising and adapting parts of what was once a magnificent system of philosophy. That's what he was doing. What was he doing? He was what? Where's my colors? go. Okay, he was reviving and adapting. Reviving and adapting parts of what was once a magnificent system of philosophy. Now, was once would lead us to think, hey, maybe it needs to be revived or reawakened. Well, that's what he's doing, isn't he? He's reviving it. Which is what we're trying to do on this channel as well. In contrast, Buddhism had a different history. It had been fortunate in being able to continue into the present age. So we have a difference. Buddhism, unlike philosophy, Platonic philosophy, not Kant's opinions or Hegel's opinions or Aristotle's opinions, Platonic philosophy, which is the philosophy that seeks to understand and express the logos, very different than opinion. Buddhism was different because it was able to continue into the present age, even adding to its rich philosophical and contemplative traditions, while Platonic, even Buddhism could even improve. Not something you see a lot of. Normally, ancient traditions, people seem to be quite set in their ways. And if it's a system without logos, they don't have an understanding completely. So fear of spoiling a system that they don't understand might lead them to not want to change or adapt or improve. Nevertheless, Buddhism has been adding to its rich philosophical and contemplative traditions, while Platonic thought has been thoroughly suppressed. That's worth a boo. And has managed to survive only as an object of scholarly research. We should also boo that. Only as an object of scholarly research, rather than a vital and profound spiritual system which could be ranked among the Eastern contemplative traditions. That was a mouthful. So, and we know this, people who are new to this channel or come into this channel often sometimes come in from a background where they learn about philosophy somewhere along the lines, and they're taught, hey, Plato was stupid. They didn't know what they were talking about. It's understanding Platonic philosophy is just a historical or academic exercise, because there's nothing of value in it. Very different from the truth. The opposite, in fact. It is in fact a profound spiritual system. Very different from the way it is taught in those other places where they reject it. They fail to mention the essence of it, which is it is a profound spiritual tradition and can be ranked among the Eastern contemplative traditions. Now, if we were to rank them, what ranking would we give them? That is a question. Well, we'd have to say, what is the vision and what is the level of understanding of Platonic philosophy compared to other Eastern contemplative traditions? And we'd have to also see how far up, well, in the vision level, how far up is their vision? How high is their vision? How high do they climb? And how well do they understand that climb? And how well do they use that understanding to communicate that climb? So that would be how you would rank them, because they're not all the same. That's not what ranking means. You'd have to give them an order. And our question on this channel is, what ranking would we give Platonic philosophy? And if it is a complete understanding and allowing us a complete ladder of spiritual states of mind, as well as understanding, as well as developing in an art, and its reach goes beyond well, includes within and also goes beyond all the other ones, would we rank it as the best? Could that be why Socrates says that philosophy is the true spiritual tradition in the Phaedo? Might be. It's a question we can keep open. One day after tea, a cup of tea. Now we have a fun game because we're a bunch of jokesters having fun on this channel, that when we say coffee, we have a sip of coffee. I think we should make an exception for tea. So if you're having coffee or tea, have a sip now, because we mentioned tea in the text, because that's the kind of fun we like to have around here. Over a cup of tea, Chon Ang offered me an opportunity and challenge that surprised me. He said that I was a teacher who was disguising himself as a student, and I should drop the mask and be myself. A teacher, drop the mask. Interesting. I wonder if masks play a role in this tradition, and I wonder if being oneself is significant. I laughed. Ha ha ha. And tried to hold to my belief that I knew nothing, that I could teach students. Interesting. He simply said that if I did, I would see myself that I was a teacher. I accepted the challenge and became Hugh An, the Master Dharma teacher. So, sounds like he leveled up. He transformed into a different person with a different name, Hugh An. I became Hugh An. Sounds a little bit like Hugh An, Superman, maybe. He went from Clark Kent to Superman, the Master Dharma tradition, the Master Dharma teacher, and I was sealed as his Dharma successor. So, within the different spiritual traditions, the Dharma successor is the next, like the next Pope of that tradition. The Dharma means the teaching. And if you know Kung Fu Panda, there's the Dharma stick, I think. I think the Kung Fu Panda or someone gets given the Dharma stick, which means he's next in line to be Pope of Buddhism. Which should be shocking because he is a white American man and not a Korean? So, super significant. Wow. And pretty cool. A short while later, in the spring of 1983, we started the Opening Mind Academy as part of his Virtue Mountain Temple in Huntington Beach, California, where I gave Dharma talks. Cho An's profound background and philosophical studies served him well. His keen insight into gathas and koans made our alliance meaningful to both myself and those who could accept the challenge of studying with him. Now, we've been talking about what a koan is, a kind of question that a guru gives a student who's interested in enlightenment, that will keep his mind open and curious. It's a kind of trick question. It can't be solved logically, so you can keep the question open. And usually the kind of answers are to do not with the question itself, but the state of mind you're in when you answer it, that kind of thing. I'm not a huge fan because the whole point of philosophical midwifery is that we can bring rationality to our questions. And so we don't need to be given a question from someone else if we can discover for ourselves, we can midwife or give birth to our own questions that we're naturally curious about. We're naturally curious about ourselves. We're naturally curious about our problems. So why have a koan? That's my take on the whole thing. Gatha is a Sanskrit term for song or verse, especially referring to a poetic meter that's used in legends and folklores, and part of the Vedas, but particular to either epic Sanskrit or Prankrit. So these verses, in contemporary Buddhist practice, is popularized and derived from Zen and Theravadan traditions by Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh. It's a verse recited, usually mentally in rhythm, with the breath as part of mindful practice, either in daily life or in part of meditation or meditative studies. That's what a gatha is. Now, that's you might recognize that as a mantra. So gathas and mantras are connected there. A verse that you can repeat, keep your mind focused on it. And again, along with koans, you could say koan and gatha are two aspects of our question. If you're naturally curious about your problems, you will keep it in your mind. You'll be wondering about it. If you had a problem with your girlfriend or boyfriend, you'll probably be thinking about it a lot, all day maybe. Can't get it out of your mind. You'll be wondering about it. The difference is with philosophical midwifery, you can bring a kind of structure to it. You can make it a gatha. You're not just using the problem to get back into that negative state of mind that caused the problem. Why did Jessica do this? I'm so angry. She's a silly so-and-so. Well, that's not helping you. In order to do dialectic, as we're learning here, you have to have a kind of temperance, one of the virtues. Even-temperedness. And your reflection isn't blame game, it's, what's the cause of this? I wonder why that happened, and I wonder why it needed to happen in this part of my evolution. So you're adding a more even-temperedness, you're adding a kind of system or structure to your thinking. The more we learn this philosophical midwifery, the more we learn the stages of reflection. So you're adding a kind of meter or rhythm, structure, and harmony to your thinking that you keep on your mind at all times, whatever you're doing. That's the mantra. And you can add the idea that it's also a question that keeps you in an open, curious state, keeps you focused, gives you motivation to stay focused on that mantra or gatha. Then you can say, well, gatha or mantra and koans are kind of like two parts of the very thing we're doing as a whole. Leading back to our question, so this could be a rival to the other spiritual traditions who just pick out bits and pieces. Pick out a little bit of what we're doing here. The question element, let's make a system around it called koans. They're keeping it focused on your mind, reflecting in a kind of rhythmic, harmonious way at all times, or a mantra. Let's pick out that part. Now, it's very interesting because earlier in the series, we talked about how philosophical midwifery is called the new paradigm of understanding human problems, and the only form of psychotherapy that's been empirically validated. But we also mentioned that in the last 20 years or so, all of the developments within the field of psychotherapy have been individuals picking little pieces out of this tradition, which has been, people often not crediting midwifery or Pierre Grimes, sometimes because, they want the fame, or because, they want their own business, so that it's important for them to say, this is my discovery. and sometimes only picking bits and pieces because they find that when they actually do philosophical midwifery, they might lose their clients because their clients get success. Thumbs up. Good for them, but bad for business for some of them. So there are lots of stories like that. So, in the same way that modern psychotherapy seems to be people picking bits and pieces from midwifery, so too could you say, oh, spiritual traditions are based around picking bits and pieces from what we have as a whole or a complete within philosophical midwifery and philosophy. You might say that. You might get some angry looks from people who really, really love their tradition. But then you'll say, hey, that's not fair. Just because it's yours, just because it's your favorite team, doesn't mean you should be defending it. Let's see if there's any validity to that statement. And if there is, maybe you could benefit and improve your own system. Right. The puzzle of how do we introduce new truth to people, because humans are often have a loyalty to what's familiar to their beliefs, which is the very principle that causes our loyalty to our pathologos, our most deeply held false beliefs, which is the whole point of philosophical midwifery. How do we remove those blocks that block our learning and development? So, Choan's insight into Gathas and koans made our alliance meaningful to both myself and those who could accept the challenge of studying with him. Many from the Noetic Society showed up and explored and compared the Diamond Sutra and Plato's Parmenides.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
We love Plato's Parmenides. It's amazing. The same dialectic we're discovering in midwifery applied to problems. You could apply it to all systems of spirituality and understanding. If it's a paradigm, it should be a paradigm for everything. If it's the logos, that's Plato's Parmenides. How can you apply the same paradigm to all possible systems of thought and spirituality? That's Plato's Parmenides. So compared it with the Diamond Sutra, as well as, the Noetic Society showed up and explored and compared these two, as well as benefited by the study of the collected works of Chinul. We drank tea together. Oh, we mentioned tea. Uh-oh.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
I don't want to eat a monkey, but I want to have some tea because we mentioned it. We're a bunch of crazy, wild people here. Had tea together, talked, and practiced philosophical midwifery as an aid to the meditative arts. Myo Bong, the patriarchal Dharma successor of the Venerable Hu Am, who was the 33rd patriarch from Lin Chi. Woof, a big lineage here. Hi, welcome, Max and chat. So Hu Am, so who is this? Myo Bong has founded several temples and is presently in Korea at the time of the writing of this book. My experience then and since has convinced me that a revived Platonic tradition that draws into a unity. Okay, here we go. This is what we're after. Let's get my pen working. What are we after here, folks? We are after a revived Platonic tradition that does what? Draws into a unity. Who? Plato, Plotinus, and Proclus. The three biggies. Now, Socrates isn't in that list because he didn't write anything down. Can awaken those of us who seek an alternative in our quest for enlightenment. So what can this do? Awaken. That's the name of the channel. Always exciting when that happens. Confetti. Awakening philosophy. Awaken those who seek So it's awakening people who are seeking an alternative in the quest for enlightenment. That's what we're doing here. Quest for enlightenment. Only rational and systematic and fun. I expect, fun and not so mysterious. It's not hidden behind mysterious ancient traditions, which can be fun, I suppose. You go to a place and there's this old guy with a funny guru beard, and he's very ancient and he speaks in riddles. That could be very exciting, I guess. But I think it can be even more exciting when it's open to everyone, demystified, understood simply, done at all times. Doesn't matter if you shaved your head or if you wear funny robes. We're all curious about what we are. That's the logos applied to knowing ourselves. And we're all curious about our problems. That's philosophical midwifery. So, I expect it would be a natural development for those drawn to this kind of Platonic tradition to go on to master philosophical midwifery. Ooh. And contemplation. And to benefit from a search for the highest expression of the mystery of existence in other spiritual traditions. So, as we gain benefit, we might realize, hey, this thing that we're benefiting so much from, understanding and removing our problems, while at the same time learning about the structure of everything, the logos, we might want to master it ourselves. And hey, we might be doing contemplation while we do that. But also, hey, let's look at the highest expression in the other spiritual traditions. How far did the other ones get? By the way, that's how a dialectic starts, if you're familiar with the Platonic dialogues. It starts with Socrates saying, hey, where are you stuck? Or, where are you at? What level of development of understanding this particular thing are you at? Because that's where we all start our dialectic, our dialogue. Or where are you stuck? Because we could address that too. So what's the highest level? Where are they at? Another way of saying the same thing, or where are they stuck? Because if this is where they're at, they might be stuck from going to the next level. Yay, lots of fun. I like it because it makes it less, makes it simple and obvious. No gatekeeping. No hiding behind special language. I mean, we do have to learn a kind of language, I guess. But it's simple and should be made clear. None of this kind of thinking.
He didn't know what solipsism was. He didn't know what deontological moral philosophy was.
That kind of stuff people say. There's Tim Pool there.
But hey.
Or people who think in order to understand mind and self and reality and gain enlightenment, along with a mastery of the way of reaching enlightenment so you can use it to benefit yourselves and others. It's not a flash in the pan. So gurus who kind of reject questions or just say, go sit on the mat, none of that. But also, you don't have to make it something that you have to be sort of like a dusty old scholar who knows a million big words because he's read a million boring books that are stupid. So people who talk like this.
Have you read Brand at all? Have you read Nagel? What about Scanlon? Have you read Scanlon or Scruton or Edmund Burke? Have you read C.S. Lewis? Have you read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe? Have you read Immanuel Kant? So you know Flick.
What has this got to do with Bob's Burgers?
Do you practice self-love in a Kantian sense? Do you masturbate to Kant? Have you seen Infinity Wars? Have you even seen Age of Ultron?
So people who talk that way, we don't need to do that anymore. So philosophy isn't like that. Well, you have to know those people. You might benefit though. You might search for the highest expression of the mystery in existence, not only in other spiritual traditions, but with Kant and Flick and anyone else if you like. Not necessary though, because we're here to know ourselves. Reflecting on my experience with philosophical midwifery, I knew it could contribute to the philosophical tradition. He knew it could do that. Contribute to the philosophical tradition. Midwifery. And that it should be separate from psychology. Ooh. Very important. This isn't psychology, it's philosophy. It's open for everyone. So in 1983, I wrote The Way of the Logos. In this dialogue, I developed a model that structured the way the Logos reveals itself. Oh, look how good the sentence is. A model that structured the way the Logos reveals itself through levels of existence, and I also justified the position of philosophical midwifery as a new profession. Hooray! So we had dimensions of reality, just as we have levels of spiritual enlightenment, or realms of existence, or levels of insight of self, or levels of freedom from problems. All these different levels of development we've been talking about. You can say all of them is the Logos revealing itself through those levels of existence. Isn't that cool? Just as before, at the end of the last episode, we said, hey, however we try and understand and remove our problems, whatever level of philosophical midwifery you're on, it's the Logos seeking expression. So as reality is the Logos, what did we just read? As reality is the Logos unfolding and revealing itself through various levels of existence, that's the unfolding. So too, in our return through philosophical midwifery, it's the Logos seeking expression. Seeking its expression in knowing ourselves, freeing ourselves, and returning home. Isn't that cool? Now, what's really interesting is if there is a structure, where are we? If there is a structure that the Logos unfolds or reveals itself through levels of reality, then it might be that very same structure we use to seek expression of the Logos through ourselves in our return up through those levels and returning home. It might be the same structure or model that unfolds the Logos and returns through the Logos. And it may be that we are the Logos. It could be that ourselves are, in fact, Logos seeking expression in the unfolding through levels of reality and in our discovery of ourselves and our freeing of ourselves in our return home. It might be the same model. Isn't that interesting? We talked about unifying mantras or gathas and koans in one activity. Koan, those tricky questions. What is the sound of one hand clapping? That kind of thing. What is moo? These nonsense sort of questions that keep you open and curious. What is moo? What is the sound of one hand clapping? You can't answer it. Keeps you open, keeps you curious. You don't want to be closed-minded. Oh, I got it all figured out. Well, now, that's the Dunning-Kruger effect. The people who think they know, they are usually the most prejudiced and ignorant and closed-minded. So we can take this open-minded question thing along with the mantra, a harmonic way of reflecting at all times, push them together in one activity, a question about our problems or a question about ourselves, midwifery or philosophy, that's what it is. The dialectic applied to a question about our problems, midwifery. A dialectic or the Logos applied to the nature of reality and self. So we can bring it together in one, gives us one thing to focus on, harmonizes and brings together and unifies our own psychic energy, our own life spirit, our own activities. We're unified in one activity. Just as he said he wants to draw into a unity, Plato, Plotinus, and Proclus, just there. Yeah. So we are drawing ourselves together. And in a similar way, we can draw together the model and structure of the unfolding of the logos to create reality and the return through the logo seeking to know itself through our individual lives and our return back to the source of the logos. So again, just one thing, one pattern, one structure, one model, or as we say in philosophy, paradigm. Isn't that cool? I think it's cool. In the chat, today I think I applied dialectical reasoning. Hooray! Big round of applause. I felt angry because of someone, and I asked myself why I was mad and how being mad every time affected my... Wow. What a nice puzzle that you gave yourself. Why was I mad? Interesting. There's the koan part, and how being mad affected my every time affected my life. Ooh. There's the systemic reflection or mantra along with the koan. I came to see how it was affecting my life in a broader way. Oh, interesting. I noticed that every time I got mad, I felt bad afterwards. Fantastic. States of mind, pushing the implications. How do they function? What are the consequences? And what does it end in? That starting state of mind, where does it end? Where does it put you at the end? How do I finish? I start in a certain state of mind called anger. Or no, actually there might have been a trigger. What were you doing right before you got angry? So there might have been a cause, but then there's that state of mind. How does it demonstrate itself? Good question. How does it affect other areas? There's definition, state of mind, demonstration, division into other areas. And then how does it conclude? There's the 4 categories. Good for you. I concluded by realizing I felt bad afterwards. And the argument was probably not very productive. Very nice. And one level you could say, well, what was it productive for? Maybe it was really good at getting me into that feeling really bad state of mind. Maybe that's its job. I don't know, that's a question. Another koan. I concluded that even though I can't always stop things that make me mad, I can try to manage my anger better, because reacting with anger doesn't help when confronting someone. Very nice. By applying the dialectical reasoning to someone who made me mad, I was able to uncover contradictions in what the person said that caused my anger. Oh. So this activity of reflecting on yourself, your state of mind, your functioning, and where you end up allowed you a kind of freedom to function more rationally. So you're noticing how it frees up a sense of freedom, a sense of power, a power that might have been stolen or usurped is a cool way of talking about it. Like somebody who usurps the throne, someone who comes and says, I'm king now. Well, you've got this energy, this psychic energy, and this rational ability. You got this life energy that's being stolen or usurped to get into anger, but having reflected on it in a certain kind of way, it afforded you some freedom from that trap, so you regained that psychic energy so you're able to function more rationally, and you discovered contradictions. You were following the logos. So you gain some freedom, and you might be able to see, hey, this problem is a kind of psychic parasite stealing my energy, stealing my time on this planet. That's what we're after in philosophical midwifery. Free ourselves from psychic parasites, allowing us to function more rationally, ideally to follow the logos. Many people can identify the immediate cause of their anger, but fewer take the time to explore its broader impact on their lives. Very well said. Now, in this game, we can go a step further. So in the same way, straight up on the board. What's going on here? Got half of a blackboard. Here we go. So here's our dialectic. Let's draw it out again. So how can you phrase this reflection in a dialectic? This is the game. So you had a kind of definition of a kind of problem. And you said, hey, I was in a state of anger. Anger. Then how does it function? Demonstration. And or maybe the anger was the demonstration. How it functions. So we don't know what the actual problem is yet. There might have been a trigger. So we can ask, what was the trigger? What were you doing immediately beforehand? What was your state of mind and functioning immediately beforehand? And then you looked at division. How does that division divide up through other areas of my life? Other areas. Now, we can say, hey, let's move this down a bit. Move that down. And this down. Another way we could say definition is the subject itself, self to self. How does it demonstrate? So there's a certain idea of yourself that's fundamental, that's underlying the whole thing. How does it demonstrate? How does it affect self to other? How does this belief affect? Now we could say, so we've got the self is the belief of yourself or something, belief of yourself or reality. Other, this other here would be you. How does what you've just defined, we don't know it yet. How does it function? Self to other. So that's you, your state of mind in anger. Now this was your next stage of reflection, which is how does that other affect other others? That's division. How does it divide up into other areas of your life? Now, the final stage of your reflection is, hey, from that division, can I come to a conclusion? Is there something the same conclusion, which is synthesis? Can I synthesize those into a unity? What's the same about these? What's the same about them? That's synthesis. And the same is, I concluded that it doesn't help with confronting people. It's not very productive. It's not productive. And it is unhelpful. So in this game, we wonder every time we have an un or a not, we try and rephrase it. So if you are unhelpful, what would you say instead of unhelpful? Like I could say, I'm not sitting, but it's better to say I am standing. I'm saying the same thing, but I'm saying it in a positive tense. So if this anger state of mind is not helpful when talking to people, how would you say that another way, getting rid of the un? Oh, we can do it here because we've got a not productive as well. So if something's not productive, what is it? No. What's another word for not productive? Bad. Right, yes, bad. And that's another point. The more we practice this, the greater our language will flourish. Right now, we start as simple: happy, mad, sad, bad. 3-letter words. But the better we get at this, the more nuance we can see. Like the famous example is like, oh, if you're an Inuit, what used to be called Eskimos, you might say, yes, unhealthy, right? So do you notice unhealthy? It's an un. Un means not. So how can you say the same thing but without the not? Right? That would be the implication. But if something's not productive, not productive is difficult, isn't it? Because I don't know if there are a lot of English words that mean not productive. What's another word that means not productive? I'm wanting to do this thing, but I'm not productive. So the Inuit example, that's snow, but the more familiar, the more you live in the snow, the more you realize, oh, there are 100 different varieties of snow. Same thing with our language. But you can think about that and use it yourself. But we've got 2 knots. That might be okay to begin with. Vain, right? That's a positive. Not productive and not helpful. In talking or confronting. Actually, another part of this game is you use the word confronting, so we'll stick with it. It's always good, important to use the logos you having a clear mind, right? Confronting. So not productive, we might say inefficient. But then you might say, well, inefficient's actually inefficient, so it's a negative efficient. So we might say rubbish. If you're unproductive, you are wasting time. I don't know. It's worth reflecting on, but that's your activity to do. So there's our synthesis. The next part of the conclusion. So conclusion has 2 parts, synthesis and analysis, which means you take this synthesis and you refer it back to the start to understand the start. So analysis is idle. That's a great one. That's the game. Good for you. Analysis is taking it back to the start. Therefore, I can conclude about whatever this false belief that's causing my anger, that divides up into all other conversations and areas of my life, that results in me being idle and not helpful in confronting people. It is, what's your conclusion you get from that? What can you conclude about the false belief about yourself, having gone through that reasoning or reality that causes anger? Using the synthesis, can you apply that to whatever is the cause of the anger? It makes whatever is causing your anger leaves you feeling unfulfilled. Right. So all you're doing is the synthesis is the unification, and now what you concluded about the pattern from the anger, not productive, idle, not helpful, you're applying it to the self. Therefore, your false belief about the self is also not productive, idle, not helpful, leaves you being unfulfilled. Analysis is like, therefore, the false belief about self or reality is not productive, not helpful, leaves me unfulfilled, and you can even think of a word that brings all of those parts together as well. Is there one word that for you that means not productive and the person I don't want to be? Nice. Not the person I want to be. So, unproductive, unhelpful, unfulfilled, not the person I want to be. Therefore, as a whole, one word, this false belief is, what would you say? Ah, brilliant. Well done. Cancer. Now that's a fantastic description of what we're after, because that word unifies all of these pieces into one. Now the thing about a koan or a mantra we've been talking about is it's very precise. It's only a few words, so you can repeat it lots and lots. Or what is mu is like 3 words. That's the koan. So here you have a puzzle, a mantra, a koan that you can think about that unifies all of that activity you've gone through. In your life, you've had the experiences, then you had your self-reflection, and then you brought it back to the channel to share it with others. That's important.
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
So you're in the game. All of that you can unify together in one word, cancer. So not only does it unify everything, it's a cool metaphor as well. It's a creative metaphoric word that unifies everything together. You can carry with you. So it also gives you motivation. That's important for a mantra or a koan. That's why it's mysterious and it's a guy in a funny hat giving it to you, because you need to be motivated to keep hold of it. You've got a motivation to hold your question. What is the cause of this problem? What is my false belief? Because it's cancer. You don't need a koan. You don't need to be given a question, what is the sound of one hand clapping? Or if a tree falls in a forest and doesn't make a sound, yada yada. You don't need that. Because you're naturally curious about what it is you're carrying that you don't know you're carrying that causes you to be in a state that you call cancer. You get a sense of clarity. Oh, that's brilliant from the chat. The great thing is a sense of clarity without feeling a victim. Right, that's what we're after in this game. A sense of clarity and dropping any masks or roles like the victim role. In fact, we are freeing ourselves from all masks, leaving us with a state of clarity and, like we said, like you shared with us, a kind of energy and freedom to think more clearly. Reflect as you did. I started to notice that when I reflected, I noticed contradictions in his thinking. So that's where we start. Now, just as we apply the dialectic in this way, we realize earlier when we were reading, we said, hey, Let's see it in the text. What we just read, Pierre wrote The Way of the Logos, which developed a model and structure, the way the Logos reveals itself through levels of existence. So we just read. So you can understand reality as in the dimensions of reality and the levels of being and spiritual enlightenment is from some sort of cause unfolding through this dialectic the levels of reality. Now, what's curious about what we are doing is we are going backwards. Now, if the first cause is what Plotinus, Proclus, and Plato calls the self, or the one self, then what we are doing is we are on a discovery for this cause. Notice, we don't know what the false belief is of the self, but it's not the one self. So we go from here, and now that we realize I've got this problem, we're going back. And I have this problem because every situation when I'm in this way, it ends in a failure. It's unproductive. I end up idle, and it's not helpful. And that I have because of a state of mind of anger. And this anger I have because of a don't know. Notice we're going backwards up. So while reality unfolds itself through the dialectic of the Logos, applied to everything, systems of thinking, dimensions of reality, levels of enlightenment, all of it, we are returning. So we are returning or reverting, returning or reverting on cause, self, the self cause. Whereas the one self unfolds or emanates. And all of this is the, make some more space. All of this is the same structure or model that we just read in the text. Let's give it this color. The dialectic, the Logos, and the structure of the dialectic. People can pinpoint why they're feeling angry, upset, but they often stop there. A limited perspective can continue to a cycle of victimization. Right, and that's important. So this problem is a problem because it's not a one-off, it's a cycle. And you saw that when you did your division stage. In other areas, it's a cycle. It doesn't go anywhere. I end up stuck. And hey, if you stay in it, then that state of mind, you'll just apply to your friends, and then they'll just make you angry again, and it'll be a self-confirming loop. That's what we're discovering. So, we don't know what the self-belief is yet. That's where the art of midwifery comes in. This state of mind of anger, so all of this happens in your present. You could say this is the present. But we can do a similar dialectic into your past. So because you've seen the importance of that state of mind of anger, you could then apply a division to how does it divide out, not just to other areas of your life in the present, But what's the history of that state of mind? How far back does it go? Where did you first learn this state of anger? Because all anger is a sense of injustice. Why? Because of the word should. Yes, with other people. Well, your own state of mind, or when was the earliest, or when did you feel it yesterday, or last week, and then last month, and then last year, and then when you're at school? Follow the divisions back. So anger comes from should. So if you, let me give you an example. If somebody bumps you on the train, you might get mad at them because they shouldn't have bumped you. How rude they are. But then if you turn around and you realize they have a physical disability, maybe they have cerebral palsy or something like that, or Parkinson's, then all of a sudden you're not angry at them anymore. Why is that? You've still been bumped. Is it because of the word should? You don't think they should have done it? You haven't really suffered. Yeah, you haven't really suffered an injustice. Our soul seeks justice. This is why we're all philosophers. In the other series, when we read, well, we're reading the Meno at the moment, we're asking the question, what is justice? Because we all seek it. And if we don't get it, we feel angry. It's hardwired into our souls. But the thing is, the kind of anger we feel in our present is to do with an injustice we suffered early on that caused our false belief. So this state of mind of anger, yes, why is the car in front of me driving so slow? You're angry and you're flipping him the bird, and then you realize it's an old man, and then you go, oh, sorry. Well, keep on going, old man. Exactly. It's not a should. It's not an injustice. Now, what's curious is the sorts of people we play out, the synchronicities or the coincidences that we'll run into people that will act in a similar way to the earliest scene where we suffered our first injustice. That's the curious thing about being a human. Now, when we went from division to synthesis, we said, hey, what's a way of unifying all of those things? What's the same about them? Well, they all end up with me not being productive, idle, and not helpful in confronting people. Another way of going from division to synthesis is, what is the most causal division, or the earliest? In metaphysics, it's the same. So of all of those experiences that you felt that same state of anger, when was the earliest you can remember? That's synthesis. Through the past. Right. And that earliest scene that we first learned that false belief about ourselves, that's what we have to look at, because that self isn't you. Your anger you're feeling is because you're carrying a false belief about yourself, and that's not just to your soul. Your soul won't allow you to keep a false belief about yourself because it's not true. It's not helpful. It's not productive. It's not the person you really are or want to be. So the real anger is at the false idea of the self that you don't even know you're carrying. And so, our job in midwifery is to find out the earliest scene where we first learnt it. That's the journey. Back through the divisions in our past. But we'll learn more about that as we read. So, when we do get into a state of mind like that, it's important to Eskimo snow. Put more words on that state of mind to really blow it up. You'll start to look for now I kind of want to help when I see people mad. Oh, interesting. That sounds like you are. what did we just read? The last paragraph in the text. My experience then has convinced me that a revived Platonic tradition that draws into unity, Plato, Plotinus, and Proclus, can awaken those of us who seek an alternative in the quest for enlightenment. This is an enlightenment method or yoga. I expect the natural development for those drawn to this kind of Platonic tradition will go on to master philosophical midwifery, also contemplation, and also your benefit. And also you'll see how other spiritual traditions address the mystery. You want to master it. So if you want to help people, well, would a mastery of the art of midwifery help you to help those mad people? Maybe. But it seems like you may have, by recognizing the benefit and the rationality to our problems, you have naturally awakened a desire to master the art of midwifery. Nice. Right. So, when you do recognize yourself in a block or a negative state of mind, and you've recognized this pattern, see if you can put more words on the state of mind. Because we don't yet know the false belief. The definition is hidden. But we are very familiar with the demonstration or the state of mind. So put more words on it. Use metaphors like you did down here. Really blow it up. Like magnify it. Because that's our treasure map. That's our map. That's our navigation. Because if we need to go back through our past to find where we first learnt it, what was the original injustice we suffered that's the cause of all of our anger, to find it, the state of mind will be our, what do they call it in One Piece? Poneglyphs or compass. Your compass will be the states of mind, because each of these early scenes, what will be the same or similar will be that state of mind. So really blow it up and put more words on it. Anyway, that's where we're going. Then we'll discover there's a hidden false belief that's inconsistent with the true nature of ourselves. That is the goal of our quest in philosophy. That Platonic tradition of Plato, Plotinus, and Proclus, the logos that we read when we read those texts on the channel, that's so we can discover the truth about the self, but at the same time we have to uncover what's false that's causing our blocks and our anger, because we have to remove this or purify as well as perfect. And also, share it with your friends. We're human beings.
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
You're a wizard, Harry.
So, like Maximus is doing, share it with us on the chat or in the Discord. Yeah, we are in this adventure together. So let's jump back into the text. Thanks for sharing, Maximus. Here we are. So in the chat, anger can corrupt the virtue of justice. How many wars has it caused? How many deaths have resulted? And how many more acts of injustice, such as inequality and apathy, has emerged from it? Good questions. Carry that one with you as you develop your understanding of philosophical midwifery. And hey, not just a question or the koan, but the hypothesis. Just from your experience today, can you develop a hypothesis? How can you relate that to what you've discovered today? Now, take both with you. You could say one's a question or a koan, one's a mantra maybe, because it's a statement. But in this game, we take both with us. Here we are. That's us.
You're a wizard, Harry.
We have a question sack that we take with us and a hypothesis sack. And you fill it up. You don't just need one. Take a whole bunch with you. Thanks a lot. You did make me go through on a level up. Good. And we have this. That's for you. And see that it not only affects just me, but others. Fantastic. Yes, that's true. We're all in this together. If it's a paradigm, then it should apply to everybody. Importantly, it applies to you. That's what we're here for, to know ourselves. But hey, if it's universal too, we can walk that path together. And if we can, what does that mean for the need for wars? If we're all doing the same thing, really. All right. Okay, I wrote the way of the logos, and in this dialogue I developed a model and that structured the way the logos reveals itself through levels of existence and justified the position of philosophical midwifery as a new profession. What the heck kind of a book is that?
What?
Wow.
What?
A book that reveals that structures the way the logos reveals itself through levels of existence? What kind of a book is that? That's mental. That's like well, it sounds like a pretty good book. As well as justifying this new profession. What kind of a book does that? Maybe we'll have to read this book soon on the channel. I had thought philosophical midwifery might function as a mode of psychotherapy. This is often how it's referred to. So let's highlight it. A mode of psychotherapy. But whether or not it could actually become a psychotherapy or be modified to meet the needs of clinical practice of psychotherapy, so modified to meet the needs of the clinical practice, was a question I could not answer. My experience with the dialectic, whoa, there's the word. This is the magic word. Convinced me that anyone who became seriously involved with it, found within a short time a clear challenge to their way of life by participating in it. Okay, if we become seriously involved, anyone, in a short time, there will be a clear challenge to our way of life by participating in it. And you are likely to undergo profound changes, some of which could be quite disruptive. Right? If every weekend you go down to the pub and your usual way of being is to, I don't know, get angry at the same sorts of people, and you have a bond about getting angry at those kinds, and you think they're the cause of my anger. And then if you adapt this new way of being and you realize, I'm carrying the cause of my anger. And those others are not actually any different than me, and that we're all here to discover the nature of the self and free ourselves from our false beliefs about the self. That could be a quite disruptive, lots of thumbs up for that, by the way, from the webcam. Lots of insights that could be profound changes to your way of being and quite disruptive for your Saturday nights down at the pub. How are you going to relate to your mates anymore? And in fact, if you are one of those empathy people, they might start targeting you as the butt of the jokes. Quite disruptive indeed to your regular way of being and whatever masks you carry. I know how to get my way. All I got to do. This is an episode of Seinfeld where George Costanza realizes that He knows nothing about baseball, but he's been hired to work for the Yankees. But he realizes if he's angry all the time, people will think he's working hard and they'll leave him alone. So he carries this mask of, oh, he's always angry. And everyone thinks he's working hard. But if you were to drop that mask of anger, it might be quite disruptive to your scam if you're George Costanza. However, that might be a profound change of clarity, freedom, more psychic energy, and as we were saying today, to be more of the self that you really are and want to be. But yeah. Maybe make a Seinfeld episode about that. Would be nice. Indeed, it had this effect on me and my family, including my children. What? What effect? What happened to his family? Had the effect of me, my family, and my children. What effect? Those who were attached to this method of philosophy, attracted to this method of philosophy and sought fundamental changes in their life, or accepted changes as the condition for doing philosophy, could accept such changes as natural. However, in contrast, those patients seeking psychotherapeutic counseling for this, contrast, psychotherapeutic counseling for this or that condition have a right to expect a more narrow and practical goal for themselves. So here's our big difference. I can't control my anger, says the chat, so I will start controlling people. And so Patrick Bateman was born. Is he the guy from Psycho? Christian Bale? So there's a cult. Yes, there's a cult classic film starring the fantastic actor Christian Bale about a study on anger and 80s corporate greed and the narrow, practical homogenization of corporate culture and how it lacks the ability to reflect on self, develop, and the implications of that anger. So yeah, good reference. Speaking of narrow and practical goals, this seems to be the distinction he's making between philosophy and psychotherapy. Normally, as a tradition, psychotherapy is within capitalism. So people don't care about changing. They like the way that they relate to their mates at the pub. They just, don't want to gamble as much or something like that. A practical, narrow goal. They're quite happy with who they are and their way of thinking about themselves in their masks. Whereas philosophy, not in the game of philosophy. You have to be seeking fundamental changes that are profound changes that can elevate you and change who you think you are to a more true expression of self. So this might be the answer to the question that we've been carrying all the way through this introduction, this first chapter. How is this different? How is this not psychotherapy? If it's the only verified form of psychotherapy, if it's the only empirically tested and validated form of a method of solving problems, then shouldn't it be the model of psychotherapy? This seems to be our first distinction. Also, it sheds light on something we find in this channel too. When we're doing philosophy, sometimes people who are unfamiliar with Platonic philosophy or are from the academic traditions where they get told a nonsense view of Platonic tradition, they're not here to change. They're very happy and very proud of themselves for their opinions about Plato and Socrates and what justice is. Maybe it got them a doctorate or got them a bachelor's degree. They don't want to change who they are. They don't want to change their opinions. but they quickly leave the channel. Because the kind of changes you go through, while illuminating, while enlightening, while profound, while beneficial, are disruptive to those old ways of thinking that you might be very happy with or proud of, even though they cause significant problems. So that's the difference. Are you willing to let go of what's false, even if it's comfortable or familiar or you're used to it? To free yourself to be able to discover your true self. If you are, then you're in the game of philosophy. If you're not doing philosophy. You was taught philodoxia, the love of opinions. You love your own opinions. Who cares? No one cares about opinions. That's a cold hard fact. No one cares about your stupid opinions. Ever. Often that's why people have kids, because the only one who cares about your opinions are usually your kids, because they have to. Why? Because opinions don't mean anything. Truth, people are interested in, because you can use truth, you can benefit from truth, you can collectively share in truth. Don't fight wars over truth. Or I guess if you're closed to truth, maybe against Hitler. But if we all realize that, we wouldn't have need for wars. So we got a really nice insight to what makes real philosophy and why this isn't psychotherapy. They expect more narrow and practical goals to be able to reach, freedom to do those sorts of things. In the chat, Bateman from Psycho is a perfect example of someone who has deep anger inside him. When you watch, you just think all he wants is to murder people. But in fact, murdering people is just a created symptom from something else. With the dialectic, you and he could have seen this. Right. That's where it goes. Sorry to go deep in other things. No, that's good. It's worth reflecting on. I like your conclusion too. Imagine if you had a mastery of the dialectic. And you were friends with him. Maybe he wouldn't have had to murder those people. I don't know. If you practice the dialectic with people, because yeah, we all have anger. It's a condition for having been born into a family. Nice reflection. A further discussion with Dr. Uliana proposed so she's the clinical psychotherapist, proposed a mutual study exploring whether or not philosophical midwifery could provide the basis for a rational psychotherapy. What is psychotherapy the way it's taught at colleges? Cognitive emotive. They have to throw in that word because they are not yet at the realization that you can have a rational psychotherapy. Maybe because that would require knowing the paradigm. And if they don't know the paradigm, well, you can say one of two things. I want to learn this paradigm that makes all of human problems rational, so we can have a rational psychotherapy. Or you can do the other response. There is no such thing as rational psychotherapy. I rebuke you, and I will kill you and your family, and I will burn down your crops, and I will hear the lamentations of your women when I draw the sword through your stomach. That kind of thing. Right? Think about it in your own life. People who themselves don't understand something, there's kind of two responses. I'm curious about understanding that, or it is not understandable. You just can't know these things. And as the Dunning-Kruger effect shows, usually the dumber the person is, the more frequently he goes to that rejection of logos, anti-logos. Magnets. You can't understand how magnets work. Magnets. They used to be a meme back in the old days. Magnets, how do they work? Magic, miracles. Now, you'd have to be quite averse to reasoned reflection and understanding to say that you can't understand magnets. Yes, the more skeptical, the more in the world of particulars, right? Good point. And then beyond that, what happens when you die? Can't know that. Really? Have you read the Phaedo? No, not knowable. But a lot of people have experienced separating their soul from their body. Nope. I can't hear you. La 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 la. Right? And then even beyond that, atheists, like strong atheists who say, oh, you can't know the nature of the divine. What? Knowing the nature of the divine is the whole, that's what Platonic philosophy is. What do you think the realm of being is? That makes dianoia. Philosophy is the learning of the dialectic and applying it to the realm of the divine, that which is eternal, causing our physical world. Of course you can. You want to dismiss all of Platonic philosophy by saying you can't know what God is? No. La 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 la. Well, why don't you join and subscribe and like this channel and join the Twitch and the Discord? Maybe you can figure out and enjoy the journey together. So these are the kinds of responses. And right now we're facing that in psychotherapy. If this is true, then we can explore whether or not philosophical midwifery could provide the basis for a rational psychotherapy. At the moment, they slip in the word emotive. It's rational emotive therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy. It's either physical or emotional and therefore not entirely rational. So this might be a complete sea change or a paradigm shift. I accepted her proposal because I reasoned that other psychotherapies have been developed from various philosophies. That's important. Psychology is a eclectic tradition in psychotherapy right now because they don't have a model. It's pretty much do whatever the heck you want, which is pretty crazy, but there you go. Developed from various philosophies. Everyone has their own models, such as existentialism and phenomenology. If you've ever been to a psychotherapist, you've been to more than one, you'll recognize, oh, this lady seems to be really into Nietzsche and existentialism, and the next guy seems to be really into phenomenology, and the next guy seems to be really into this other thing. And they're all contradicting each other, but they all seem very convinced in what they think. And they all charge a lot of money too. We agreed that the study would have two parts. I would present a series of essays outlining philosophical midwifery, and she would, okay, we've got essays, and then she would subject two of my midwife talks to various psychological evaluations. The very thing that Carl Jung never did. Ooh. Together we would present the conclusion and its implications. Interesting, because that's what we do when we do dialectic. Right? Let's have a look. In our reflection today, we looked at the conclusion. The conclusion and the implications back to the belief. But also we looked at the result of the false belief, the anger, and its implications in other areas of your life, and its implications in how it results, and all the way through the dialectic. Conclusion and implications of their work. As we worked and reflected on the project, it grew steadily from a correlation study to its present form, a full-scale validation study. It started as a correlation study. Can you correlate benefit and success in solving problems to their work in midwifery, to a full-scale validation study? The only one, as far as I'm aware, that has been proven in a validation study. I knew that how much time? Yeah, got some time. Let's have some coffee. I knew that a properly conducted study could challenge many accepted notions. That's what we want. Hey, if we were already enlightened, would we even be human? And would the human being be, our human species be the way it is? No. So the common accepted notions are wrong. Or at least a large majority of them are. Key ones, at least. Especially the notion that man is not responsible for his own plight. Right? The case should be sought in biochemistry, in his genes. Right? You are the way you have because of your DNA and your genes. And in the historical circumstances of his day. You can't reach your destiny. You are just genetically. Like we've had some racists in the chat before. That's what they think. You can't help these other people. They are just their genes, and their biochemistry says they don't have the right genes. So we can have a hierarchy, not a true hierarchy of the levels of development we all go through to reach enlightenment. That would require learning. That would require challenging your old beliefs. That would require mastering the logos and midwifery. No, 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 no. I'm already at the top. Doesn't matter how rubbish and useless I am, or the way I live my life, or how ignorant I am. I'm already at the top of the hierarchy, nani, nani, nani. Because biochemistry says these other races are below me. Very appealing to people who have been told to hate understanding and development. Or historical circumstances. Ain't nothing we can do about it. It's just the way the world is. And in the prejudice of others. Now this is interesting, because we do have prejudices from others. We do have genes. We do have circumstances like capitalism that we are in. But despite all that, maybe we have a power to develop in spite of that. There are many who could not accept our basic conclusion that man is responsible for his own state of mind. We were talking about that today, weren't we? Yeah, this guy might be prejudiced, and there might be racist beliefs, and it might stink that I have to work with him because of the circumstances of capitalism. But still, I can go through a kind of reflection and development myself to change my own state of mind. And to otherwise is an irrationality that is learned. And our problems can be traced to, this is a big one. Oh, let's give it a different color. Our problems can be traced to conclusions that we have, that we ourselves drew from our interactions with the family, authorities, social institutions, and traditional teachings. That's what we were talking about before. So we talked about how what we recognize in our problem, even this reflection allowed more rationality, we saw. Just a simple reflection allowed me to act more rationally and relate to the statements that my friend was making. But also, this reflection put me in a better state of mind. The historical and biochemical and prejudice of others conditions didn't change, but this activity allowed you to be allowed our shadow friend to be in a better state of mind and function better in the world. And we talked about realizing that, hang on a second, we still haven't seen the cause of that living dialectic he was playing out in his life. That's why we need to trace that state of mind. The next stage of dialectic reflection is to chase it back to its divisions through past to see where we first learnt it. First learnt what? First learnt the conclusions we ourselves drew From who? From family, authorities, social institutions, and traditional teachings through our own interactions with them. Get to the cause of the thing. In chat, Nietzsche argued empathy and equality were traits of of slave morality. Oof. He sounds like he'd be fun at a party. Which he viewed as arising from weakness. Oof. He gets better and better. While courage and power are traits of master morality, linked with strength and self-assertion. Why not stick them together, Nietzsche? Very good question. In fact, that's exactly what Socrates and Meno are talking about right now at the time of recording on our other series. When asked about virtue, Meno said, oh yeah, there's a different kind of excellence for a slave than there is for a master. And Socrates said, hang on a second. If there's one word that you say is virtue, and you can apply it to a man and a woman, and he goes, and the virtue of a man is managing the city, and the virtue of a woman is only managing the house. Hang on a second. If there's virtue that you can apply to a slave or a master or a man or a woman, what's the thing itself? Not the particular expressions, but what's the idea in being? What is virtue itself? And he said, by the way, there are other things that we recognize as ideas, principles in being. Well, not just a principle, but they have a life. They are living entities, so to speak. But they're also principles needed for our physical world. Like health. Hey, whether you're a child or a slave or a master or a woman or a man, health is the same. Size is the same, and strength is the same. So can we come to a conclusion using a dialectic, just as we did today? Can we come to a synthesis? Is there anything the same in those divisions? So we say, hey, is an idea in being that demonstrates itself in the divisions of slaves and masters and men and women? Well, can we divide that up to other ideas like size, health, and strength? If they're always the same, then can we come a synthesis, unify what's the same about all of them? That all ideas are the same, doesn't matter who you apply it to, including, and then analysis, take that conclusion, bring it back to the start. That's analysis. Therefore, virtue. The excellence or the virtue of anybody has to be the same. Therefore, a different virtue for a slave and a master is false. So you might like checking out our reading of Meno that you can catch up on YouTube, because it's very similar to what you just said there. It was clear that these conclusions would also seriously question those long-established academic distinctions that separate the professions and disciplines. Right? Aristotle's game. Long-established academic distinctions that separate the professions. Botany, chemistry, physics, all these different things. Divisions. So you could say, hey, this academic tradition in the Latin and Aristotle tradition, you could say, hey, we're just dividing it up. Division. You could say, yeah, it's a division stage. Why not, as we said of Nietzsche, why don't you bring them together? Why don't we bring them together in synthesis? So we are at kind of a arrested development. We're partway through a kind of dialectic. You could say we're at this level and we need to move on to the next one. Nevertheless, currently they separate the professions since they are themselves products of and based upon philosophical distinctions that can be critically reviewed in the light of our study. So we can seriously question them, because they are products of philosophical distinctions. Division. On the one hand, there are many who believe, and we care heaps about beliefs. That was a bit of a joke, we don't, unless we are interested in surfacing our false beliefs to remove them, that philosophy could never compete with psychology. In the field of psychotherapy, and that psychology could never become part of a rational system. Key. Psychology can't become part of a rational system, as that would mean it could no longer be perceived as being primarily an empirical science. Why do they want it to be an empirical science? No longer be perceived as primarily an empirical science. Yet on the other hand, it was also obvious to those in philosophy that including philosophical midwifery, here we go. Let's go a different color. Let's go this one. It's obvious to those in philosophy that including philosophical midwifery was an essential part of Platonic dialectic. There's the dialectic again. Hooray. It's more than a return to a revitalized Platonic study. Yet, on the other hand, it was also obvious to those in philosophy that including philosophical midwifery as an essential part of Platonic dialect is more than a return to a revitalized Platonic study. So we're going even beyond Plato. We're going beyond Plato. That's one of the puzzles. Does Socrates function greater than Plato? Well, that's a puzzle. Did Socrates apply the dialectic to problems? There is some evidence to suggest he did. Did Plato write about that? Nope. So, we are not just returning to a revitalized Platonic study, we're going beyond it even. Showing also that problems are rational. Philosophical midwifery places the individual's search as its primary concern. And that's an ugly green color, isn't it? Do you have a better green? This guy, yeah. The individual's search is the primary concern. And in that position, it returns philosophy to a Platonic vision. Really? So philosophical midwifery says the individual's search is the primary concern, and in that position returns philosophy to a Platonic vision. What does that mean? Through this approach, philosophy can chart its own research, can design its study as the nature and uses of the dialectic. Hooray! We're always very happy when he uses the big word, the big D word. Philosophy can chart its own research, design its study, of the nature, design its study of what? The nature and uses of the dialectic. And can approach its object without adopting an empirical behavioral framework. We aren't just doggies that do things because we want cookies. Give a cookie or give a smack on the nose. Charting this, so that's behaviorism. It's just physical, like very down. Charting this course of philosophy would return to an earlier vision of man and the universe. One that's what? Understandable, rational, unified in one discipline, open to all people, healing and perfecting, expressing the logos, learning its structure, the dialectic. returning to a Platonic vision, charting this course for philosophy. Earlier vision of man in the universe. Hooray! Checking with the chat. Actually, now I'm thinking, I see some logic in what he's saying, but it's only logic from getting stuck in demonstration. In other words, he was stuck in the particular world. Nicely put. Take that insight you see about Nietzsche and take it as a question or a hypothesis, put it in your inventory. Take that with you as you read Meno with us and see where it goes. Good for you. Clap. In other words, he was stuck in a particular world like I was with anger, just feeling bad and a victim. Nice. So, if that previous way of thinking was stuck in the particular world, how would you describe this new way of thinking that differs? Yo, welcome to the chat. Just finished last week's Republic meeting. Oh! And all the dirt words. The dirt words? Statues are hard, stable, and man-shaped. Last week's Republic reading. Oh, where I made that hilarious joke about... There was a part in the read-along where Socrates said, what are the difficulties people have? Yes, people have in getting into philosophy. And now one of the things he said is, it's because people who claim to be suitors or lovers of philosophy and want it as their profession are they're not doing philosophy at all. They're illegitimate suitors. What we would call is debate bros or people who love their own opinions or haters or debaters or the regular people, the people who claim to be philosophers nowadays. It was the same back then for Socrates 2,500 years ago. So if people think, oh really, philosophy is just being really smug with your own stupid opinions because you can use big words.
He didn't know what solipsism was. He didn't know what deontological moral philosophy was. He didn't know what utilitarianism meant.
Like that, like how Tim Pool talks, right? Well, if that's philosophy, yuck. So when we were reading that in last week's Republic read-along, check out Mindy's channel, all about Platonism. Every once a week we read a text together. We're in the Republic right now. Anyway, when answering that question, what makes philosophy difficult for some people to get into, I made a very hilarious joke that everybody in chat would find amazing. I said, oh, it's because, so when Socrates was saying that, hey, people who claim to be lovers of philosophy are illegitimate suitors, they're not really children of philosophy, they are bastards, as a metaphor. Now, the text we're reading isn't the Balboa, it's like an old-fashioned English text where bastard just means like an illegitimate son, or it's, you're not really in the family. So Socrates was using it as a metaphor, and the old-fashioned translator used the word bastard. So I made this hilarious joke when I said, oh, that's what Socrates was talking about. Why people are put off from getting into philosophy. And I said, because it's full of dirty swears. Because we said the word bastard. Now, obviously, people are not put off from philosophy because of the word bastard and it's full of dirty swears. It was a joke. I was pointing to that other thing that bastard was pointing to. I was being clever. And nobody laughed. And Mindy was like, ugh. Anyway, moving on. I was like, no. So sometimes I make hilarious jokes that everyone would find hilarious in this chat because everyone here is very clever and has a very good sense of humor. But sometimes it doesn't go well in Mindy's reading group. So that's what Des is talking about. people don't do like philosophy because of the filthy, dirty language, like bastard. But it's not. It's because it's marketed poorly by the people who claim to be the experts today, as it was back then. Right? Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. So, jokes are always more funny when you have to explain them. We all know that. Oh. So even after I explained the joke, they were like, "Oh, okay." But if you guys were there, you would have been laughing. You would have sounded just like this. And then everyone would have stood up and went. Yeah. D is in death and S in case. Des. Still not Z sound in it. Case. Dace. Dace? Des? Des? Des. Not Des, it's Des. Case. The whole short bus. Des. I got it right. It's Des, right? Des. Are you setting me up for a D's nuts joke? Des. Okay. Understanding why I was feeling... Oh, thank you. Understanding why I was feeling angry allowed me to see how it affected my life in a broader way. I reached a conclusion about my personal experiences and began to recognize the potential negative effects of anger of society. Brilliant. As above, so below. As within the soul, so within the society. It's like I now have a brighter torch illuminating the darkness around me, enabling me to see not only my own dialectic, but also others' dialectics more clearly. Brilliant. Well, I think that's a fantastic note to end on. So, in our reading, we have come to a conclusion that there's a difference between past bastards of philosophy and what we're doing, which requires actual exploring of the logos and dialectic and actual personal change that can be profound and disruptive. It's different from psychology, that they want narrow goals, they want to keep their way of being, they just don't want to smoke as much. We see that there is a kind of false belief within the system of psychology that they want it to just be a physical thing, an empirical science. And it's part of a tradition where you separate all of the studies into various physical things. Physical plants, you're studying botany. Physical chemicals, you're doing chemistry. That's our academic tradition. And we say, well, why don't we just understand a single system? If there is an understanding of anything, couldn't there be a model or structure for all understanding? Could that be the dialectic and the logos? If so, we can return to we don't need a physical, imperative, behavioral framework. We can return to an earlier vision of man and the universe. A revitalized and even improved, unified study of Platonic philosophy. And if we have a revitalized and new return to a different vision of man and the universe that is even beyond Plato, then maybe we can stop using the word philosophy and say, because philosophy is often thought of as one among many. There's your philosophy and I have my philosophy, and Kant has his philosophy and Nietzsche has his philosophy. But actually, if it's just a single system of understanding how reality unfolds through the logos and how we ourselves return through the logos, then maybe it's just a single unified study of reality that we could call the love of understanding. But not understanding the physical world, understanding the realm of being. So we can call it philodianoia, the love of understanding the logos about reality and being. Philodianoia, that's the new vision of man. and solving problems and everything. So that's where we're at here. He's not using the word philodianoia, although he did drop that word to me personally a couple of times when I was hanging out with him. But it's not in the text, but it seems to fit what he's saying here. Philodianoia, the love of understanding reality, truth, and the dialectic. So, an earlier vision of man and the universe, as Maximus put very nicely, to become more rational, to become more empathetic, to be less narrow in your vision of yourself and the world, to see how, hey, the negative problems that you suffer apply to society as a large, becoming yourself in the world, a brighter torch illuminating the darkness around you. And if you are such a torch, please share your light with all of us on the channel. Join the Discord. It's free. There should be a link below. And share your insights and your illumination and learn to practice the art along with all of us. You can like and subscribe on YouTube. You can follow on Twitch. Links are all below. If you join the Discord, you get notifications when we go live. If you want to support the channel and you have the means, you can do so through Discord, and maybe we'll get some donation links up there soon as well. So yeah, good job today, everyone. And I will see you next time. Thank you so much.